Welcome to another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul Delivery, your host today, and my guest today is Jason Dion. Now, normally, Jason, when I introduce people, I have a line or two. Your bio is so long, so we don't have time to give it all. But you are a former cybersecurity practitioner and college professor who is now the lead instructor at Dion Training Solutions, and you also have a master's degree in information technology with a specialization in information assurance. And we'll go through all your credentials, but you have I think every cert known to mankind. So the list was too long to mention, but welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks. Yeah, I definitely have a bunch of certs. I don't have every cert. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today as we talk about, degrees and career and certifications, is that there are just so many darn certifications out there. There's over 1,800 certifications and nobody needs them all, right? And so it's one of those things that I see people collecting certs like baseball cards, and that's just not the way to do it. So we'll talk more about that as we go through, but thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. So this is one of the we'll talk about many topics today. My shows tend to go all over the place sometimes, but one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about today is you have a training business, and information technology or cybersecurity or whatever you want to call it today. There's such a need for qualified people, and you hear all the statistics out there that there's X amount of thousand jobs available and no one to fill them.
Yep.
But I think from what I can see, the standards from the HR folks that are putting out these requests are way too high, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So, I often talk about this as they're looking for a unicorn that also is a donkey. It just you can't have both, right? And oftentimes you'll see these applications out there or job postings that say, hey, we want somebody who's got 20 years of experience. They have a master's degree. They've got 20 different certifications. And then you look at the thing they're asking about, and it doesn't even make sense because you can't possibly have that. One of my favorite ones is there was a programming job out there, and it was written out that said, you must have 10 years of Go programming experience. Well, the person who wrote Go only wrote it 3 years earlier. So the programming language is only 3 years old, and they want somebody who has 10 years of experience with it. So the guy who wrote the language goes, well, I guess I can't even apply for this job because even though I created this, I only did it 3 years ago, and they want 10 years of experience. So this is where hiring managers just don't know what they're asking for, or don't know what they really need. And so when you talk about a qualified person for this cybersecurity role, what does qualified mean? And I know that's what we're going to be talking about today as far as, degrees and certifications and experience and how all those work together so that people can figure out, is this the right place for me?
Yeah. So just getting back to that point, do you think it's the hiring manager or whoever's putting out the post for this position is kind of trying to cull the herd? I mean, do you think they're trying to just get, all the people that aren't even remotely qualified and get the people that really think they are? I mean, is that a strategy? What do you think?
I really wish that was the case, but it's not. Usually the case is that the people who write these job positions just don't know what they're doing. My undergraduate degree is in human resources, so I actually know what I'm talking about here because I worked in that field for many years. But what ends up happening when we put, as a hiring manager, if I want to hire a new job for a cybersecurity analyst, I'm going to go to my HR department. I'm going to say, I need a new job for this. They're going to say, great. What do you need? And you'll say, I need somebody who can do this role. And then what HR will do is they'll pull out the last job description they had for that same position. And if they've already hired, 5 cybersecurity analysts before, they'll just take off the last one and use it. That's usually a little less dangerous because it's already built for your company. The problem is that a lot of people, when they're hiring a new position, hey, we just know we now need some cybersecurity stuff. Let's go hire 3 folks for that. What they'll do is they'll go on LinkedIn, they'll look for a job similar from another company, they'll grab that, they'll change that company name to their company name and then post it. And so a lot of times the HR people who are writing these job descriptions don't even know what the terms mean. So if I say, what is CISSP or what is CISA or what is PMP? The HR people probably don't even know because they're HR people. They're not IT people. And so it becomes this dynamic between the hiring manager and the HR to get the job description right. And the biggest problem is that as a hiring manager, you're usually not just a hiring manager. You have a real job too. And so the amount of time you can spend on hiring is probably, very, very little. And so often you'll just say, I need a cybersecurity person. And then HR goes out and writes something. And if you don't take the time to look through it and give it a good common sense based on your knowledge of this industry, you're going to get stupid things like you need 10 years experience when the thing that you're asking about has only been around for 3 years. that becomes a big problem, right? So I don't really think it's as much as a herding technique, because honestly, we have all these HR systems that are AI based and machine learning based, where I can put in my job description, and when you're applying, it's now highlighting your resume based on those things that I've asked for. And so it's very easy for me to see, are you qualified or not? For instance, in our company, we use an AI based tool for that. And so when I put in my job description and you apply for it, it will start saying, okay, you are an 80% fit or a 20% fit. And so pretty quickly I could say, just show me people who are 50% and above. And that way I can cull the herd in one click of my mouse, and I can go from 100 resumes to 15 resumes. So I don't really need to ask for 20 years of experience to find somebody who might have 5. I can just ask for what I need.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. So, well, let's dive right in. So that leads me to my next question, or next topic, I should say, is, we're all conditioned. You have a college degree. I have a college degree. And when I was raised, I was actually the first generation of my family to go to college. My mother always pushed me, you got to get a college degree.
Yep.
I'm not so sure in the information technology business that's the right way to go. I mean, it is a way to go, but I mean, what are your other options? Because, going out and spending all this money on a college degree, and we can go get some other avenues. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. I'm a child of the 80s as well. So in my generation, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, everyone told us, if you don't go to college, you're going to be nothing with your life.
Right.
I will tell you, I have a college degree, I have an undergraduate, and I have 2 master's degrees. None of those have ever gotten me a job, to be quite honest. The one degree I got for my first master's degree was because where I was working in IT already said, hey, if you want to get to the next, management level, you're going to hit a ceiling if you don't get a master's degree. And so I went out and got the master's degree, because in that career path, you had to have it within 5 to 10 years of being in the job. Otherwise, you would have timed out and gotten basically thrown away. And so it wasn't that it got me a job, but it got me to the next level.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is this whole thing, especially for us, if you're an 18-year-old coming straight out of high school, you probably don't have this mentality where I've got to go to college. It's the only way. But if you came out 20 years ago, like I did, I graduated back in 99. Back in 99, everybody went to college, or you were going to be, flipping burgers at McDonald's is what they always told us. Right. So everybody went to college, got a degree in, film and art and music and whatever it happened to be. And the problem is we sold this entire generation this idea that college was the only way. And that's why we have this big student loan debt crisis, because everybody took out a gazillion dollars in loans to go get these degrees. And now they're still working at McDonald's flipping burgers, right? Or whatever it is they're doing, because they didn't apply that in the marketplace. So there are jobs that require a college degree, and you just have to have it, right? If you want to be a CPA, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you got to have a degree, right? You cannot do it. There's only one state in the in the US that allows you to get a degree, or to get a pass the bar exam and be a lawyer without getting a degree first. Every other state, the other 49, you have to have a degree.
I think that's Louisiana, right?
I think that was Washington State. It was either Washington or California. It was over on the West Coast. It was one of those.
Okay, I thought it was Louisiana.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's California if I remember correctly. But one of those two, you don't have to have a degree, right? Or you can get a degree in anything. If there's another state where you can get a degree in anything, but you still have to have a degree, but it doesn't have to be a law degree necessarily. But if you could pass the exam, they'll still let you practice law. In IT, we don't do that, right? It's not like you have to have a degree to be able to get a job in IT or in cybersecurity. And the way I look at college is a valuable thing. There's a lot of things you're going to learn in college. But if you think I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a master's degree in cybersecurity, and then I'm going to go get a job, it really doesn't work that way, especially in the cybersecurity and IT realm. And let me talk a little bit about why that is, right? So if you look at a college degree, what is the value of this college degree? Well, in the old days, it was you get this degree, you get a job, you go work there for 30 years and you're good. Like my grandpa's day, he went and graduated MIT, went to work for a large company doing mathematics and quality control for them. He did that for 35 years. Then he retired, got his gold watch, and sat on the beach for the rest of his life, right? Whatever it is, right?
How times have changed, huh?
Right? Yeah, that doesn't exist anymore, right? I mean, how many people know that's been at their company more than 5 years? I mean, very, very few at this point, right? Because we jump around so much. And because of that, this value of a college degree of this is your ticket, and the only thing you need to get a job, that just doesn't hold true anymore. Instead,
I think that's a misconception. I'll agree with you on that one. I think kids come out of college thinking, well, I've got a college degree from this prestigious university, I'm set for life. And that's just the beginning.
Yes, exactly. And when it comes down to the degree, right? When as a hiring manager, what I look at with a degree is the fact that you can stick to something for 4 years and get it done, right? Yeah. That's really what it tells me. I could tell you earlier in my career, I used to work as a nuclear reactor operator with the US Navy. And back in that program, they would take officers. They had to have a degree to be an officer, but it didn't have to be an engineering degree or a math degree or a physics degree. I had some people that were my best students in that program that had film degrees, forestry degrees, and things, art degrees and things like that. But the reason the Navy wanted those people with a college degree is they say, well, if you could stick with this for 4 years, we could throw anything at you. We can give you all that information. You can learn it and you can put it to work, right? So it's this stick to itness, I guess.
Sure. It shows that you've had enough discipline in your life to do something for 4 years.
Yep. And to stick with it because it's hard and it's long and it's boring and all that kind of stuff. Right. I know when I went to college, my first 2 years, I was a computer science major and I didn't take any computer science classes because everything was, math and physics and biology and sociology and art and English. And I'm like, man, when do I get to computer stuff? Right. And that's one of the big problems we have with degrees is that there's a lot of wasted time that's outside of your degree field. But the real value in this degree is it gives you a good broad-based experience. It teaches you how to think, it teaches you how to write, and it brings you up to that more elevated level, right? So that's kind of what you're learning in college and what the value of the degree is. Now, do employers value a college degree? This is really the hard question to answer because it depends, right? I'm going to give you the lawyer answer here, which is it depends. I come from a family of lawyers and they love saying it depends. They
never want to commit to anything, right? I mean,
exactly. Well, the problem is it's all situational based, right? So if I asked you, you want to get a job at Google, do you need a college degree? Well, most of the time, no. Some of the times, yes, depending on the job you're applying for, right? On the other hand, if you're applying to go work as the IT guy at Dion Training, I don't really care if you have a degree or not. It doesn't matter to me. I care, can you do the job? And so you'll find smaller companies have more of a relaxation against those college degree policies than larger companies do. If you're going to go work for someplace like a college, I have somebody on my staff who works in our learning and design area, and she has a PhD. I never went out looking for somebody with a PhD, but she came from the world of academia and colleges. And if she didn't have a PhD, nobody would even look at her to give her a job. Even though she wasn't teaching in the classroom, she had to have that PhD because that's what was expected in that type of an organization. So it's important to identify the organization you're looking at, and that will tell you if an employer values a college degree. Now, I will tell you over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been this huge shift away from college degrees because of the student loan burden. And people started going, do I really need a 4-year degree to put somebody in as a cybersecurity analyst? Or can I put them through a 1-year trade school where they get a couple of certifications and they're certified and they can do the job? And what people are finding is that, yes, that second method works just fine because these people are doing just as good because they don't need all the other stuff. Like, I don't need to ask you about, Nietzsche and psychology and sociology for you to be able to program a computer, right? And that's the problem with college is that there's this general knowledge base that everybody has to get regardless of whether it applies to your job.
Sure.
And so, that's kind of where I see employers looking at college degrees. And again, it's kind of a cultural thing. The younger startups don't really care as much. The older ingrained people do. In fact, I used to work with the U.S. government, and their promotion system was based on college degrees. If you wanted to make GS-13, for instance, you had to have a college degree. Otherwise, it was like almost impossible. If you want to make 14, you had to have a master's degree, right? If you want to make 15, you had to have at least a master's, maybe even a PhD. And so they really did tie education to these higher level roles because that organization, the U.S. government, felt that education was important and they wanted to incentivize that. And so it really does depend on which employer you're looking at there.
Yeah. What's funny is you got me thinking about this. I actually know some people that are trying to encourage their kids not to go to college now, instead of saying, hey, we're going to rack up, $200,000 in debt if we don't have the cash to do it. And now you're 4 years behind the curve. Now you start working and we got to pay it back versus go out. If you want to be a plumber, electric, whatever you want to be, you start working right out of college. You've got a 4-year jump on everybody and you have no debt. So I don't know. There's a case to be made, not for everybody, but there's definitely a case to be made for that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing that, the problem with a college degree that can really hurt you is if you have too much of a good thing as well, right?
Right.
If you go from high school and go get your bachelor's degree, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. And a lot of the college programs now, especially in IT, are bundling in the certifications too. So for instance, if you go to Western Governors University or University of Maryland Global Campus, most of their courses, if not all of them, are tied directly to a certification. So you'll take this college class on hardware, you'll go take the A+ Part 1 exam. You'll take this class on software, you'll take the A+ Part 2 exam. You'll take this class on networking and go take the Network Plus exam. And so by the time you leave college, you've got 5, 10, 15 certifications plus a college degree. So you're set up pretty well. The biggest problem I see is I have some students who go from high school, they go get a bachelor's degree for 4 years, they go get a master's degree for 2 years. So they've now 23, 24 years old. They've got their they've got a high school diploma, a bachelor's degree, probably a handful of certifications and a master's degree. And now they're applying for their first job. Well, I could tell you as a hiring manager, that scares me, right? For a couple of reasons, right? One is you've really not shown me that you can do anything in the real world. You've shown me you can go to college for a really long time and be a student. And there are some people who are just perpetual students. And when you put them in the workplace, they don't know how to work because all they've done is study and pass tests, right? So that's one thing that worries me.
Yep.
The second thing is you have no real world experience, right? And so when I'm hiring somebody with a master's degree, I'm usually hiring them into a management level position. Well, to be a good manager, you have to understand what your people are doing. If you've never had work experience, how are you going to come in and be a manager? And so that's one of the places where I see a lot of people become overqualified. And then even if you're trying to apply for an entry level job that may be, $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year as a cybersecurity analyst, I, as a hiring manager, I'm looking at you going, this guy's got a master's degree. Is he going to want to take a $50,000 a year job? Probably not. Let me move on to this other person who only has a certification or only has a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, that's a tricky balance, I'm thinking, Jason, right? Yeah, that's a tricky balance. You get all these degrees, but it may box you out for some positions.
Exactly. I had a friend who used to say, I don't want to hire that person. They've got more degrees than a thermometer. And so, it's one of the things you have to weigh. And I've actually had some students that I work with at Your Cyberpath, which is yourcyberpath.com, which is my podcast on cybersecurity, hiring and this whole career world. And in that podcast, we've talked with some of these students that have had master's degrees and they're in a different field and they're trying to break into cybersecurity. And the way we were able to help them break through the noise was we actually took out their master's degree and didn't tell the employers about it in their resume. So even though they went off and had a master's degree in marketing, for instance, I had one student who was like that. Because they were applying to jobs that didn't have to do with marketing, we told them take that off because you're scaring away employers. And when she did that, makes sense. She got a job pretty quickly. And so, even though she paid, $100,000 for this master's degree, she's not even telling her employer about it because it wasn't relevant to the job she's trying to get. And so those are things you got to think about too when you think about degrees. So, think about what is the value of the degree? Do I need it? And does the employer that I'm going for actually care about it? If you think about those three things, it'll help you make the decision of whether getting a degree is right for you. Now, all that being said, at some point, if you don't have a degree, you're going to hit a ceiling in the industry. Yes, you can get your first job, you can get your first probably 5 or 10 years. But if you want to move from being a technician into being a manager and making bigger dollars, you're going to have to get a degree at some point. And the nice thing is you don't have to do that right out of high school. You can go back in nights and weekends and get a degree online. I can tell you my master's degree, I did it nights and weekends online because I was already working in the field and I didn't have time to take off 2 years and not get a paycheck for 2 years. So I did it online with one of the reputable schools. And in the IT realm, most people don't care where you went to school. They just care that you went to school. It's not like you need a Harvard or an MBA. It's not like you're saying, I have a Harvard MBA. That means something. In the world of IT, if you just say, I have a bachelor's degree, that's good enough for most of us. We don't really care where that degree came from.
Yeah, no, all good points. So let's kind of move to the next topic here. So talked about a college degree. So if college degrees aren't the end all be all, the next phase would be certs and training and a lot of the stuff that you do, right? So talk a little bit about that. What other options are out there for kids?
Yeah, definitely. So, the other area that we look at as hiring managers is certifications. Now, certifications and degrees both have their place. And one of the reasons that certifications are such a big deal for us as hiring managers is they tell us that you are current and you know things, and they're usually more tied to a particular job. So, for example, if I'm hiring you for a help desk position, I'm going to be looking for you to have either A+ or your ITIL foundation. If I'm going to hire you for a pen testing position, I want to see CEH or Pen Test Plus or OSCP. If I'm hiring you for a governance, risk, and compliance position, I'm looking for CISA or CAP or CISP or CAT or CISM or CASP or whatever, right? There's all these different certifications based on the industries or the jobs you're trying to go to. And the reason that we do that, even if you already have a master's degree, is because your master's degree or your bachelor's degree was done. It was a point in time. So let's talk about you. When did you graduate college, Paul?
I'm ashamed to say this. I'm showing my 1981.
Yeah. See, so 1981. Let's say you went and got a IT degree in 1981. Has things changed since 1981 in computers?
I would think so. So I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right there. I actually have a degree in math and I minored in computer science. Back in those days, there were MS degrees. Right. Yep. They were just starting to become. By the time I finished college, that degree was just coming out. I would have probably gone that route, but I had already gone 4 years of college, and it was too late. But that's when management information systems was becoming popular.
Oh yeah, definitely, right. And that was the old MIS degrees, right? And now we call them like Masters of Cybersecurity, or there's MBAs with a specialization in IT and all that kind of stuff, right? I'm thinking back to myself. I got my master's degree in 2010, which was 13 years ago. Back when I got my master's degree, we didn't talk about cloud computing at all. It wasn't even a term yet that people cared about. Nowadays, almost everything we do is in the cloud, right? And so this is the problem with degrees, is that there is no continuing education requirement. There's no expiration. When you earn your degree, it's good for the rest of your life. That may be fine with something like math, where 2 plus 2 still equals 4 20 years later, but it's not the same with computers, right? Computers change way too frequently. Yeah. And that's why a lot of organizations really like seeing certifications, because those certifications, they change every 3 years. The certification exams change. And once you pass one, you either have to retake it every 3 years, or you need to go and do continuing education to prove that you're current every 3 years, or get the next higher certification, which again proves currency. Right. And so by doing that, you're showing an employer, A, I'm a continual learner, B, I know the latest technology, and C, I can actually do a job, because these certifications are tied directly to a job environment, like, hardware and software repair, networking, security, cybersecurity analyst, pen testing, whatever it is. And so that's why degrees are that's why certifications are so important. And that's one of the big drawbacks of having a degree. Degrees are super expensive, right? Cheapest college degrees I see out there are $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. They go up to $200,000 or $300,000. A certification, I'm thinking about like Security Plus, right? The test itself is about $380. The training to get the test is somewhere between $20 and $200. So for about $600, you can get your Security Plus and walk into an entry-level job. Nice. Versus going and getting a degree for $50,000 and maybe getting that same job, right? So that's kind of where I see a lot of the degrees versus certifications. And then again, we talked about there's this shifting trend going from degrees into certifications, including Google, for instance, which is a huge tech company, and what they do, a lot of people follow. They've started de-emphasizing degrees and emphasizing certifications, and they've even created their own certifications for a lot of their positions, so that you don't need to go and get a student loan for $50,000 or $100,000 to get this entry-level job in the help desk, right? And so that's kind of the idea of as we're moving through these certifications and why they are so important. They're related to jobs. They're directly in line. And then for us as hiring managers, the other thing is it really is an easy button for HR and hiring managers, because when I put out a job description, I say must have Security Plus. The first thing we do in our filter is we look through all the resumes, and if you have Security Plus, you go in one pile for consideration. If you don't, we throw you away. And so now I've gone from 1,000 applicants down to maybe 50 applicants. Now I can read those 50 resumes, decide which of the 5 I'm going to interview, bring those 5 people in, interview them, and choose somebody from there. But it becomes this filtering mechanism. So I see a lot of people say, well, I've got experience or I've got degrees. And I'm like, well, you still need to go get the cert, because most of the hiring filtering is done by a computer. And if they don't see that little word on there that says you are blank certified, you're not going to make it in front of a hiring manager. No real human's going to look at it. And so this is where, we get into, what is most important: degrees, certifications, experience. They're all kind of important depending on where you're applying and based on what that job position is. But a lot of places will just take a certification or certification plus experience to get you in, as opposed to needing that degree. And then you can go back later on to get the degree to get to higher pay bands and higher levels in your career.
Yeah. One thing that it's hard to consider is the person themselves, right? On a piece of paper, someone may have all the great communication skills and great learning skills, but if he doesn't have that cert, he can't even get to the interview. Because I know our company, we have a small company, and we hire some guys just based on what we feel their aptitude is. They may not have all the certs, but we'll help them get the certs if we feel like that person is going to be a good fit for our organization, and they're smart and can grow and can learn and help the team,
Yeah, I think that's actually really interesting, because I was actually doing a live stream last night with my Facebook group and my YouTube students and going through some of this. And one of the things we brought up was this fact of that there are some companies out there like yours that will take a chance on people who don't have the experience yet, or don't have the degrees, or don't have the certifications, and they're willing to build those people up because you're looking more long-term. And generally, if you do that, that person will stay with you for a while because they kind of feel indebted to you because you got them into this industry.
Right.
The other thing that I see with that's really important is that when you're doing your interviews, and we talk about this a lot, is that there's usually two types of interviews. There's technical interviews, and then there's behavioral or fit-based interviews. And most organizations will weight these differently. I've seen a lot of them will do 70-30 or 30-70. Depends on how your organization is. And a lot of organizations that focus more on cultural and fit-based over technical. And the reason for that is the fact that if you're cultural and fit-based, I can teach you the technical stuff.
Right.
But if you have all the technical stuff and you're a jerk, I don't want you working in my office, right? And so I'm going to kick you out. And so I'd rather have people I like, that I know, that I trust, or that somebody else has recommended. For instance, Paul might say, hey, Jason, I heard you're looking for a new instructor. I got this guy who works for me. I think he'd be great. You should give him a shot, right? That internal networking goes a long way in this business. And that person, even though they may not have the certs or the degree, I'll still interview them because I know Paul and I trust Paul, and he recommended them. And so you'll see a lot of that too, because cultural and fit is just such a hard thing. And if you can find somebody who's a good cultural cultural fit, you'll train them. And I can tell you about half the people on my team, they did not have any experience in the roles I hired them for, but I trained them into those roles because I like them and I like their personality and I knew they'd be a good fit in our organization.
No, I think that's overlooked a lot of times. It's just that cultural fit and the personality, and having that skill set that they say, hey, this guy's got it. He's got ability. We can teach him the nuts and bolts, right?
Yep. And especially for us, right? We're a training company. That's what we do, right? So it's really easy for me to hire somebody on and they go, oh, you need to have Security Plus for this position. All right, give me 2 weeks. I can train you on that. That's not a problem, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things you have to think about. And a lot of organizations don't want to put any money into training because there's been this trend where employees stay for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and they go to the next job. And so that's created this idea of the employees aren't loyal, but the companies aren't loyal to them either. So the companies don't want to invest in the people because if I train this person up, they're going to take all that skill and go work someplace else and make more money. The problem is, if you as an organization decide to take that approach, you're going to guarantee that you are going to be a bad organization for the rest of time. Because if you're not investing in your people are what make up the organization, right? If you're afraid that I'm going to train this person, they're going to get good at their job and leave. Well, the other side of that is you don't train this person, they still suck at their job and they stay. That's worse.
I know. Now he's stuck with this albatross.
Those are the kind of things you have to think about. When you talk about this whole training and being able to train people if they're a good cultural fit. If you're a leader in an organization, I would tell you behavioral and cultural fit should probably be 60 to 70% of your weighting. And the technical side should be, 20, 30, 40%. It really is much, much lower because technical can be trained. This isn't like I'm hiring a doctor and I need somebody who can do surgery on day one. I can train you for a couple of weeks and get you up to speed.
Yeah, no, cool. So another question I was just thinking about this is, we're talking about different ways to get into information security, cybersecurity, whatever you want to call it. What about things like the military? Like, the reason why I say that, I have a nephew that went into the Air Force, didn't really like college, and kind of for the reasons we've discussed. And he tested really high on the entrance exam, and now he's doing cybersecurity. I don't know exactly what he's doing, but he's going to get this 4-year training that the government's paying for, and he's going to come out in 4 years and maybe stay in. I don't know, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you're asking a military veteran here. So
I knew that would go well for you being a military guy, but I had to ask the question, right?
Yeah, no, it is actually a excellent way to get experience. And it's actually one of the things I talk about a lot with my students. I say, how can I get into this world of cybersecurity if I have no experience? Well, one of the ways is you can join the military. And what a lot of people don't realize is you don't have to join the military the way that your cousin did, where he's going full time and that's his entire job and they're moving him around the world all the time, which I did for a number of years. But there's also a thing called the military reserves. And if you join the military reserves, you get the exact same training. You get all the same certifications. You get all the same security clearances. The only difference is you're working 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, and then you can opt to go on 1-year deployments based on, when we were in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, we had a lot of those. Right now, there's not nearly as many, but that is the way the reserves work. And in my company, we actually have a couple of folks who are still in the reserves and they do that. So 1 week in a month, they're off doing their drill. 2 weeks a year, we give them time off. They go work for the government and do their military stuff. They're getting awesome training. They're getting awesome pay. They're getting awesome benefits. And it's really good. The one, thing you got to realize is that the military is not like a regular job. It's a really, really hard job, right? It really is. They work you crazy hours. They move you all over the world. They pick you up. I know you're down in Texas. If you join the military, we might take you from Texas and put you in Japan or Germany or New York or whatever, right? My first duty assignment was in Charleston, South Carolina, and then they moved me to upstate New York. I'm a Florida boy. I'm sitting in 2 feet of snow in the middle of winter in New York, and I was not enjoying my life, right? So there's things that you don't really have control over when you're in the military. They're going to give you orders and tell you where to go. But that being said, you're going to get awesome experience. You're going to get awesome training. You're going to get your degree paid for. You'll get your certifications paid for. And when you decide you don't want to be in the military anymore after 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 20 years, whatever it is, there are a million government contracting jobs out there where you could still work with the military, but now have control of your life again, and you'll make more money, but you can use all the experience and stuff you had from the military and be able to use it. I will tell you that I work with a lot of military folks who are getting out and transitioning, and military folks rarely have a problem finding a job in cybersecurity after, because they already have a clearance. They already have, 2 or 3 years or 4 years of experience. They've got their certifications. They may have some degrees. And so it's really easy to place those guys and gals, and they do a really good job. So the military is a great way to look at that. Again, college doesn't have to be for everybody, right? And if you do want to go to college and you can't afford it, well, go to the military for 4 years, because they'll pay for your entire college, and they'll actually pay you to go to college, right?
So that's the other avenue, right? Is go for 4 years, get experience, go out and get a job. And now with technology today, you can get a college degree sitting in your living room, right? I mean, you don't have to. The old days, when I went to school, you had to show up to class. There was no, video presentations. But I think basic in those days, I was writing on a stone tablet too, by the way, just so you know.
So, I'm not quite as old as you, but when I was going to college back in 99 through, 2003 timeframe, we actually had virtual classes, but their virtual classes weren't online. Literally, like I had to go to my campus to go sit in a room, and then they had a computer with a video camera, basically a Zoom setup back before Zoom was a thing. And we would actually be, 3 or 4 of us in that classroom, and the instructor was all the way across the state in the main campus, but we were taking it remotely, and that was a virtual classroom. So yeah, I mean, technology has changed. Now we all do it from home on our iPads and our phones and tablets and all that stuff, and it's so much easier.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. So I have my youngest daughter is getting a master's degree in electrical engineering, so she's still in college. So I get a feel for what's going on there. And the fear that I have in college now is that too many kids will take the easy route and just stay at home and watch their professor. And I'm like, why send them to college then? Why don't you stay home and do it versus spend all that money? But that's a topic for another day, I guess.
Yeah, and actually, I had a friend who really went off on the whole college thing during 2020 when everybody got sent home, and they were still paying for room and board, books, tuition. Yep. They're paying $50,000 a year to be at Harvard or MIT, and yet now they're sitting back in Kansas in their living room, paying Harvard prices to take it online. I'm like, well, you could have gone to the community college for a heck of a lot less, right? Or you could have gone to state school and done it from home for a third of the cost and get the same experience at this point, because you're not getting the camaraderie and the networking that happens at college.
And I think that in the business world too. Now I'm older. I've had my time. I feel that's one of the biggest detriments to this whole work from home thing is that sharing of tribal knowledge, sitting in meetings, getting to know people, shaking a hand. We don't even have an office. And now, granted, we're a smaller company. We have people, about 30 people all over Texas, and we have our annual meetings. I'm meeting people I haven't never met before that we've been working with for a year. It's kind of, I don't know. I'm a little old fashioned in that regard. I like to shake a hand, give someone a hug, and build that bond. It's really hard to do over a Zoom call, I think.
Yeah. And, it actually brings up a really good point for those who are thinking about their careers, right? A lot of us had the opportunity to go work from home during the pandemic, and now offices are trying to bring people back. A lot of companies are allowing you to either work from home or work from the office or do a hybrid approach. The one thing I would tell you as an employee, you may love working from home and not having to get dressed and going to the office every week. I will tell you, you should go in the office at least once a week, right?
Yeah,
and the reason for that is if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And when it comes time for promotions, raises, whatever, they're not going to think about you. I've had this happen to me personally. I was working in one organization. I was in a travel heavy position where I was going about 50% of the time. So half the time I was out of the office in a different state or a different country. The other 50% of the time I was in the office and people could see me. Because I was doing such good things on the road, they go, oh, we have more stuff we need you to do. And I was now out of the office like 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. And so I rarely was actually in the office. It was like one day a month I would be able to get back to the office in Florida. Well, I went to a holiday party, and somebody, the new boss, came up to me and goes, oh, hey, welcome aboard. I'm so glad you're here to join us. And I'm like, I've been here for 2.5 years, dude. You just got hired 3 months ago. He goes, oh, I didn't know. I never met you before. Because for that 3 months, he was out of the office the days I came in, things like that. And so that FaceTime is really important, because when it came time for them to rack and stack people for promotions, I used to be the number one guy, and I kept, getting promoted up quickly. But then when I was in this heavy travel position, people didn't see me anymore. It was like, well, Jason must not be working hard. He's in Hawaii every other week. It's like, well, no, Jason's in Hawaii doing work for you. He's working 80 hours a week in Hawaii. You're just not seeing it, right?
That's actually great advice, by the way.
Yeah.
We all get spoiled to just roll out of bed, jump on our computer, in our PJs. But I think the young kids are getting robbed today. That's my personal feeling, that they're missing out on a lot of educational situations where they can grow, work at a company, see how meetings are run, see how people interact. You can't learn that over a Zoom call.
And then the other thing is, if your company is all remote, there are ways to do that, and it will be okay. If you're in a 100% remote company, nobody's going in the office, so you're all on a level playing field. But what I'm talking about is companies that allow remote as an option. And if you're a remote person, just realize you're going to hit a ceiling in your career where you're not going to be able to advance anymore because you're not willing to come back to the office, or they just don't see you, and therefore they're not thinking about you as that person, because you may be the greatest individual contributor. And if you're in an individual contributor role, working from home is totally fine. If I hired you to be my technical writer and write practice exam questions all day, I don't need you to come to the office to do that. I just care that you write the questions and that they're good.
Right.
But if I'm going to have you manage a team of people who's doing that, then you probably need to be in the same room with them or have a way to reach into them. And you can do a lot of that on Zoom with breakout rooms and all that kind of stuff. but it's not the same. I go to a lot of conferences, and I can tell you a lot of conferences have tried doing this hybrid approach where you can do it online or in person. And every time I've done it online, I feel like I get nothing out of the conference because I'm busy looking at other things. Other people come into my time. That time isn't there. I don't have the connections. And when you go to a conference in person, most of what you're learning isn't in the conference session. It's in the hallways when you're having a drink or you're getting a beer after work and you're meeting them at the bar. And that's where the connections and the networking happens. And that's just a really important thing. Even in the cybersecurity industry, as you're trying to get a job, most of the jobs you're going to find are going to be because somebody you know that already knows you, likes you, and trusts you. And therefore they say, oh, you know what? I know Paul. I have this new job at my buddy's company. Paul, you should apply for this because I think you'd be a good fit because of X, Y, and Z. And that helps get you in the door as well. So, so that networking, it's an old school concept, but it really is important and it still works these days.
Yeah, we are human beings, right? I mean, seeing how people socially interact is part of the job.
Yep.
Right. I mean,
it goes back to that cultural and fit thing, right? We were just talking about, right? Like if I'm hiring somebody as a contractor just to get work done, I don't really care if they're a good cultural fit. But if I'm working on a team or a development project or something like that, and most of what I do in my job is a team effort, there's very few things that it's one person doing it by themselves. And so we need to make sure there's that cultural and fit and that you get along with others and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So we've talked about several different ways to approach this, right? The traditional get a college degree, get some certs, maybe the military. Are there any other, any other avenues that someone could take? I mean, you've been doing this a long time, so this is right up the alley for you. Any other advice like that you would have for the kids out there, or not even kids, adults that want to change careers?
Yeah. So as a hiring manager, right, we're looking for three things usually, and we weigh these differently depending on the position. It's degrees, which we've talked about, certifications, which we've talked about. And then the third one is experience. And we haven't really talked about that much yet, except for a little bit of you can go join the military and get experience. So I want to talk a little bit about experience because I think it's really important.
Okay.
As a hiring manager, that's usually my number one criteria is I want somebody with experience. Why? The reason experience trumps everything else is because it means you can do the job. You've actually proven it before, right? If I hire Paul to be my MSP, I know he can do it because he's done it for hundreds of other companies out there, as opposed to me being his first customer, right? That experience matters. And the same thing, if I'm hiring a cybersecurity analyst, I want somebody who's been a cybersecurity analyst before for some other company because it lowers my time to training. It brings in new knowledge and experience from that company into my company and all those other good things. And that's why hiring managers really love experience, right? Now, the problem is, if you have experience, I have a lot of people say, well, I've got 15 years of experience and nobody will hire me. And I look at their resume, they don't have a degree and they don't have certifications. Well, the problem is 15 years ago, you could get a job with just experience because you were actually applying to a company and they read every resume by hand. These days, that doesn't happen. It all goes through an applicant tracking system known as ATS. And in ATS, it uses keywords and filters to figure things out. So even if Paul has 20 years of experience and he's the most qualified candidate, if he doesn't have a bachelor's in IT and that's what I asked for, or he doesn't have a security plus and that's what I asked for in the job posting, that system is going to push him out and say he's no longer qualified because he misses that one little requirement. So I have a lot of people who have been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years and they just got laid off from their job and they're like, what do I do now? And I'm like, well, the first thing you need to do is I look at the resume and go, you need a security plus because 70% of the jobs out there are asking for it and you don't have it. Now, you could pass that test tomorrow because you're smart. You already know all this stuff, but it's going to be worth the $380 for you to go take that exam because you're now going to have it on your resume and you're going to start going through the filter. And the person I'm talking about, he did that. And within 2 weeks, he got hired by another company because
that's great.
It just wasn't getting picked out because of that limitation of not having the certification. So that's why it's really important. Even if you have a degree or certifications, or even if you have experience, you still need certifications to get found inside of that pile.
Yeah. So, and in this online world we live in right now, I think LinkedIn's a big piece of this too, having an updated profile with all your credentials. Because I know I get hit all the time on LinkedIn for job offers, or interest in job offers. So obviously I'm at a point in my life I don't need another job, but it's nice to have people that are interested.
It's nice to be wanted though, right? I get the same thing. I get people reach out like, are you looking for a job? We were hiring for a new CSO. And I'm like, nope, not looking for a job. I'm good. But thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah. That's what I usually respond to everybody. I say, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'm good at this time, but I appreciate your reaching out.
Yep. And then, the other thing, we talk about this whole experience thing, right, is how do you gain experience? And one of the biggest blocks, especially if you're brand new to the field and you're trying to get your first job, everybody will say, well, you don't have any experience, so I don't want to hire you. And they're like, well, how do I get experience if nobody will hire me, right? Because it's this whole catch 22, right? You need experience to get the job, but you need the job to get experience, and it just goes roundy all day long. And one of the things I tell people to break through that is you can either do the military. That's a great option if you're willing to do that commitment. And again, you go there for 4 years, you're going to get certifications. They'll pay for your degree. You'll get all the experience, all that great stuff. Other things you can do is you can volunteer. So, you can work with the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, your local church, Cyber Patriot, which is a capture the flag competition for high schoolers. They're always looking for mentors and people to work with them. And so you can go work with your local high school team, and that counts as experience, because what are you doing? You're doing cybersecurity stuff. You're doing defense. You're doing attack, and you can then take credit for all that. Other things you can do is you can work on open source projects. So there's a lot of projects out there like Metasploit and Nmap and Wireshark, and they're always looking for people who are either developers or people who can document things, people who can create training videos. All that stuff is things you can get involved with. It doesn't pay, but it counts as experience. And I'll tell you, as a hiring manager, it really shows me you're dedicated to this field and that you want to be given a chance. And so it goes back to what Paul said. I'll find that person who is hungry, that's passionate, and I'll train them on the things I need. And I'll overlook some of that stuff if I see you in those other areas. And then going back to, again, to networking, if you don't have experience, if you can find somebody at a conference, on LinkedIn, in your neighborhood, and you're like, oh, I met Paul at this group about IT professionals. Paul then might have connections to Jason's company and say, hey, Jason, I met this guy, Jim. He's really awesome. You should give him a shot. And at least then I would give you an interview. Whereas before, with no experience, I may have just thrown your resume to the side, right? Because now you've gotten a recommendation from somebody I know, like, and trust. And so that's kind of some of the ways you can circumvent this whole catch-22 of how do I get experience when nobody will hire me? Yeah. And the other thing I've done in the past myself, when I was a young 18, 19-year-old straight out of high school and I was in college, I actually just started my own company and I started doing consulting. And by doing that, I now could say, look, I was an IT network engineer and consultant, and I supported these 50 companies, and I made this much money. But more importantly, I supported these 50 companies, and here's all the things I did. So then when I wanted to get a real job, I could then turn and say, look, I had this, Jason Dion consulting group. I had 50 customers. Here's what the stuff we did. And they go, oh, so you already have some experience. We can hire you in and then teach you our ways. And so it's another thing you can do. It's kind of, the if nobody else will hire me, I'll create my own job. But sometimes that works too.
Yeah, no, that's funny. It's funny looking back, we've gone through this, earlier in our career. Looking for that first jobs, it can be a daunting task, and you think the world's going to end. And then you look back and you say, I got my first job. It was okay. And it got me going in the right direction. But you're going to get that first job if you work hard enough at it. It's that's the name of the game.
And going back to what you said earlier, right? There are millions of jobs in the cybersecurity industry that are vacant right now. We need people for those jobs. The problem is we want qualified people, right? And we talk about what is a qualified person. Well, it's degrees, certifications, and experience in some proportion of each other. For the more entry level, degrees are much less important, or even not important at all. Experience still has some weight, and certifications become more prevalent. As you go further in your career, experience starts weighing higher, but you still need those certifications and maybe a degree for certain positions and certain levels of positions. And so understanding that, and as you said, that first job is honestly, it's the hardest job to get because you don't have the experience. Once you've been in that job for 6 to 12 months, everybody's going to want you, because everybody wants more cybersecurity analysts, especially at the entry level. But everyone's also afraid of hiring somebody with zero experience. So as soon as somebody else is giving you some experience, they go, I saw Paul just worked a year for Microsoft. Come over here and work for us at Google now. Right? We're going to poach you. And so that happens a lot in our industry. Where people get moved around. And once you get that experience under your belt, you have, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months of experience, you are so valuable in the marketplace that you can just grab a couple of key certifications and just shoot right up. I will tell you, a lot of my students, between 2 and 5 years, it takes them to go from zero to their first $100,000 a year job. Most of them do it in 2 to 3 years. Some who are a little bit slower take up to 5 years. But our industry, you may start out making 50, 60, 70,000, but within 2 years, you should be at 100,000 or more. I will tell you, most people with 5 years of experience in the IT world, or in cybersecurity world specifically, are making 150 or more per year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, by the way.
It's a great career field, but you got to get in first. And that's the hardest part, is that first entry level jump in.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, we've touched on a lot of subjects today, Jason. So, as you've eloquently explained, there's many different paths here.
Yep.
Right. You can go the college route, you can go the certification route, the military route, volunteering. So I think that, you've given the folks out there a lot of different options, because I have people come to me and say, I'd love to get in cybersecurity, but I don't know how to do it. Well, I'm going to show them this video. That's what I'm going to do, and say, call Dion Training, and they'll get you started for sure. So,
yep. Yeah, definitely.
Well,
And anybody who's interested in the cybersecurity career field, especially from the hiring manager's perspective, definitely check out yourcyberpath.com. It's YOUR cyberpath.com. That's our podcast. We've got about 90 episodes already out.
Nice.
And we've been going for about 2 years, and we talk about everything from degrees to certifications to the different roles. You may go, hey, what does a cybersecurity role look like? We've got actually an entire series where we cover about 10 or 15 different roles as we've gone through, starting at episode 30 through about episode 50. And we say, okay, here's what a day in the life of penetration tester looks like. Here's what a SOC analyst looks like. Here's what an IT analyst looks like. Here's what a GRC analyst looks like. And so you can go, okay, now that I hear that I want to be in cybersecurity, which role do I want? And this helps you identify that.
Good stuff. So, and also your training company is diontraining.com, correct?
Yes, exactly. If you need any certifications, we are there to help you. We've got everything from ITIL to we've got all the IT service management, cybersecurity certifications, Linux certifications, and project management certifications. We've got about 40 courses right now for all the different certifications. So if you need it, we probably got what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Jason, this has been great. This is a subject that, I get hit on a lot from people about, with the situation with information security and cybersecurity. And I think this is very informative. I think what people are looking for is a concrete way to do something, right? Instead of just throwing your hands up in the air and saying, I don't know what to do. Well, you just gave them 4 or 5 different ways to get to that point. So I think it's good information, and hopefully it'll be well received. I think it will be. You've been doing this a long time, so I think you know what you're doing at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why we call it your cyber path, right? Because as we talked about in this lesson, right, every job and every career you're trying to get into inside this world of cybersecurity does have certain certifications or certain requirements or certain degrees or certain experience that you should have under your belt. And being able to identify where you are and where you want to be and creating your path, and then knowing, okay, these are the 5 things I need to do to get to that role. And then the last piece of advice I would give people is always think in a long-term horizon. And what I mean by that is when you're thinking about your career, don't think about the first job you need. Think about what job you want in 3 to 5 years. And by doing that, always thinking kind of 2 positions ahead, you'll be able to figure out what you need to do to get there. For example, I have a lot of people who tell me I want to be a pen tester, but I have 0 experience. Well, how do you get to be a pen tester? That's probably going to take you 3 years, because you're going to have to go through the help desk. You're going to have to go work in service management. You're going to have to work in the back end servers and networks and all that kind of stuff, and then work in the cloud a little bit. And now you can be a pen tester, because to break things as a pen tester, you have to understand how they all work. And the best way to do that is to have some experience 6 months or a year in each of those positions. And so identifying that it's going to take me 3 years to get there means you won't be as discouraged, because if you start applying directly for pen testing jobs, you're going to get turned down left and right because you have no experience in those other areas. And so by building yourself up and knowing what your path is going to be, and each path is individualized based on where you want to go, you'll know which degrees you need, which certifications, which experiences, which job titles, and you can start targeting those things to get yourself to where you want to go.
Awesome. Well, Jason, that's great advice. And I guess we'll close on that, because that's really the crux of this whole thing, is giving people direction on what to do. So thanks again for being on the show. This is a great topic, something I'm very interested in.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for Business Brain and the Bottom Line. Until next time.